Hi, everybody. The person we're interviewing today, we're talking to today, you've probably heard of. She is the global phenomenon of the online coaching world. And I can't wait to introduce you to Jen Casey. Hi, Jen. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. So happy to be here.
I am so happy that you're here. Why don't we start really briefly? What is it that you do right now, and who do you do it for?
So it is interesting to ask that because we are in transition right now. So for many years, I was working with online coaches who wanted to build and sell online coaching programs, helping them niche down, really work on their program design, launch and sell. And in the last year, things have really been, and so I still have those offers, but things are really transitioning into much more spiritual, aligned offers and really helping people with more of the inside job of entrepreneurship.
I can't wait to dive into this, by the way.
Yeah.
So one thing that I like to start with is, you've made an amazing business like on your own. You've had amazing amount of success, and anybody that I say the name Jen Casey to, they know who I'm talking about. They've been following you for so long. You have an incredibly loyal and supportive fan base. And I like to start with, how did you become a global phenomenon? Like, so take me back. I'm going to start in college. Okay.
Yeah.
Take me back. You are a college student, you're studying psychology, correct?
Yep.
I want to know, first of all, was psychology something that you were always drawn to? Is that something that you knew you wanted to study? Tell us how you arrived at that major, first of all.
Yeah. So I was sort of wanting to pursue musical theater, but also wanted to do psychology and ended up transferring schools a bunch, couldn't really find my footing. Now I know, I don't know if you are into human design, but as a 3-5 projector, apparently it is my aligned energy to be in trial and error and experimentation. So it all makes so much sense now. But at the time, it just looked like, what the heck is Jen doing? And so, yeah, I really loved psychology since I was a little kid. I was always that friend that was the listening ear and giving people support. My mom and aunt are both therapists. So I was the 3-year-old that was correctly using words like ambivalent to express how I felt. And instead of saying, my brother would always be really annoying, but instead of saying he was annoying, I would say, Mommy, Peter's being passive aggressive, and really understood those words. And that was my lexicon for life. And most people had no idea what the heck I was talking about, but she thought it was funny to teach us, psychology-based words. So it's always been a part of like who I am, just because that was like what I was raised on, talking out your feelings and, like all of that stuff. So I really love psychology. And, after college, I went to really pursue my acting career. And what I found very interesting about the parallels of the psychology world and the acting world is, in psychology, you're looking at a fully formed human. They have this challenge or this struggle, and you're peeling back the onion layers to try to get to the essence and the root and the core of what is causing them to be stuck. But in the acting world, you're looking at a piece of paper with some lines of things that an imaginary person said, and you have to take those words, bring them to life, and build this 3-dimensional, truthful, authentic human with all of the quirks and nuances that people have. And so I see it acting as the reverse of psychology. And so it was really interesting for me to be able to explore that world from both angles. And I feel like that really gave me a different insight and perspective on, the human condition.
So let me ask you, there are 2 people in your life that I can't wait to talk to you a little bit more about. One of them is Angie Lee. Can you tell us who Angie Lee is? And right now, remember, contextually, we're thinking you're really decided to go all chips into your online business. Who is Angie Lee, and what part did she play at that time?
So she and I decided to partner in business together in 2016, and we had a program that we launched together, and we did that for a year and a half.
And that was the Wellpreneur Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So funny things happen with partnerships, right? How do you know when it's going to be a good one that is going to serve you for that time, and when is it time to part? And I see this usually as a marriage, is because you're really aligning both of your visions together and saying we're all in together. I'd love to know what was that partnership like, and how did it finally evolve into you guys going into business on your own?
Yeah, so it definitely evolved. Like you said, like having the lessons that I've learned is like making sure that you have the same vision, but also recognizing that like everybody's vision evolves. So being able to come to each other and have open conversations and check in and really figure out like, does the vision that you have still the vision that aligns with like where we're going? Because things grew very quickly
Mhm.
for us. I think too, a big lesson I learned is like really having a big conversation around what are your values in business. Um, because I don't think we were fully aligned on our values. There were things that were very important to me about, you know, and it's not that we didn't have the same values, but it was more of the order. Like when you look at somebody and you're even hiring now, that's such an important part of our hiring process, being able to look at what is most important, like what are your top 3 values, because those are going to be the things that primarily drive your behavior. And
Mhm.
so for me, like customer service and quality experience was above all. And so I was willing to, you know, give refunds in a different capacity, or be like, you know what, I heard this person, they didn't feel like this met their expectation. You did the sales call, I did the sales call, this was not met, we didn't communicate this effectively. Like, how can we change this? Because we grew so fast. We had like over 100 people in our programs like overnight. So
Yes.
when you grow that quickly, there are some definite like growth challenges where you're like, I need to have capacity to actually be able to serve all these people. And
Mhm.
when you're not expecting 100 people to join, you're maybe expecting 40, and all of a sudden you have 100 or 150. It's like, okay, wait, that's going to be a lot more energy. These coaching calls are going to be run a little bit differently. Not everybody's going to get to be heard and ask a question. So like, how are we navigating those things? And so, yeah, like those were, we just had very different ways that we saw the business evolving, and we saw the way that we, you know, wanted to reach people and serve people in very different ways. So ultimately decided to end the partnership. But yeah.
Yeah. let me let me in a little bit on the that launch, getting so many people in so quickly. I would love to know what was going on with you at the time. Did you expect such an amazing success, and to what do you credit it? What do you think were the things, like, I can see in hindsight why it worked?
Hmm.
What were those reasons that you believe it really resonated with people?
So this was the first big one was in 2016. So that was when live video had first come out on Facebook.
Mhm.
And most people were not getting on live. Most people, it's so funny to think about now where everybody's on stories, everybody does live videos. But at that time, people were absolutely terrified to be on live. And I had this long history of a performance background. So by like my 3rd or 4th live video, I was like, I got the hang of this thing. First couple were, you know, full blown like sweaty moments. But we actually met through like a community, and she saw some of my live videos and was like, we should connect, we should mastermind together or whatever. And that was like kind of the beginning of, you know, she was also doing a lot of live videos. So we both had a lot of very fast visibility through Facebook Live and very active Facebook groups. And when we ended up sort of combining forces, I think we kind of cornered the market on health coaches and really serving that niche. Like she had this certification background in nutrition, and I had my network marketing background, and also I taught group fitness classes. So I had like we both like just our past experiences kind of lined us up perfectly to serve this community. And even other people who were teaching business, they were teaching it to very broad niches, and because we narrowed in so quickly and had the experience, we were able to, like, for example, bring in an expert to talk about the legalities of what types of food plans you were able to legally offer based on your state, because there's some states where you cannot give somebody a personalized meal plan unless you're a dietitian. There's some states where, so we were bringing in this deeper layer of understanding that some of these very well-known, you know, business and marketing programs, you know, similar things that they were teaching, but they were teaching it to such a broad market that it wasn't as applicable in the way that we had really, you know, kind of presented things, and people were getting amazing results from it. So
Yeah. And what you just mentioned about live streaming is that effect that it has to have a brand new way to deliver a message, right? That at first, it grows slowly and then it just kind of catches fire. I am curious, what do you think is the 2022 version of live streaming, not necessarily live streaming. You know what I mean? Like the 2022 version of like the thing that is catching fire right now that people need to get on. I'm curious if you have an opinion about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a second it was Reels like early last year, but I think probably TikTok is where we're seeing things. Like I love Gary Vee, and he, talks about how a couple of years ago it was like everybody was hopping off of Facebook and really just growing their businesses on Instagram, and Instagram started bringing in all of these new features and things like that. And now sort of TikTok has taken over and dominated the market, and sort of we're seeing a lot of people like, where's all my engagement on Instagram? Who's on, like, everyone's kind of it's like follow the attention. Where is the attention? And like, yeah, we kind of hit the Facebook Live market when everybody wanted to sit and watch live videos, and podcasts were still like young at that time. And so, yeah, I think TikTok is probably the closest equivalent to like where the attention is right now. I think YouTube too. I think YouTube is like, I mean, it's the second largest search engine in the world, after Google. And I mean, the friends that I have seen consistently pull in, automated revenue, it's like they all have a presence on YouTube, and some of them don't even post that regularly anymore, but they've built audiences over the years.
Wonderful. So there is somebody else. I initially said there are two people I wanted to ask you about. The second person is Lauren Elislove. Lauren Elislove is a very successful spiritual healer. By the way, everybody can go listen to her episode with me. It's episode 37 of this podcast right here. And I know you just had her on your podcast. Can you plug that in right now?
Sure. On the CEO Psyche podcast. I don't remember what episode it was, but
it was around the May timeframe. Go and find the interview with Lauren Elislove. So Lauren Elislove, you might want to know, she was the first global phenomenon that I saw as a global phenomenon. She was one of the first people that I started following when I started my business. And she's the one that really showed me what an online business could be. At the time, she had the Badass Business Babes brand. And I followed everything she did. And I'm not shy about this. I told her all about it when I met her. I'm like, I've just read and watched everything you have put out. I've just been a big fan of hers for a long time. And in her podcast, she talks about the feelings of comparisonitis that she felt when she was building her business. And she would always kind of relate it to being friends with you and watching how your business just skyrocketed, and how she was feeling like, well, why is my business not working? And she is, I know that you guys are great friends, and she has blown up as a healer, and everybody should go follow Lauren of Love on Instagram. And I wanted to know if you knew that she felt that way, and what was your perspective of, because you guys would mastermind together. So tell us a little bit about that relationship with Lauren.
Yeah. So, I mean, her and I have had many conversations behind the scenes, and, are best friends, and, spend time together in person as much as we can, and have been mastermind partners since the early days of both of our businesses, definitely the early days of her business, because I was already doing network marketing for a few years. But she was really the first mastermind partner that I found who could hold space for me and kind of keep pace, and had the same hunger and tenacity and desire to really build something. And so we would be at Tony Robbins together, and she was my roomie for like every event, and just like my real life best friend. And so, yeah, it's been really beautiful to have different dialogues over the years. And I did a sisterhood podcast with her and Catherine Zankina and Ashley Gordon and Stephanie Bellinger and Stephanie Burgos, where we just talked about, just growing together as a group of friends, and, how different things will trigger each other in different ways. And I think something that Lauren and I have done really well in relation to, like comparison, is just really understanding each other's like sisterhood wounds and like female relationship wounds. And we always do a really good job for each other of holding space for those conversations. And I think we're at a place now where like we've had different challenges over the years, and it always comes back to, I know that you're not going anywhere. Like, even if you're making 10 times the amount of money as I am, or even if, I'm like having this bout of depression, like you're not fucking going anywhere. Like, you're stuck with me. Like, you can push me away all you want, but you're stuck with me, for both of us, right? So I think that we've really, through the different struggles that we've had together and individually, we've really been so open and communicative about all of those things. And really, with my whole, all of the close women in my life now, we just have this deep understanding of each other's triggers, so that we know how to navigate those seasons of life together and make sure that each person feels really safe in the relationship, to be fully seen and to be fully vulnerable. So it's like, if I'm struggling with something, I'm not comparing myself to her. I'm just going like, hey, I really, really need help, you know?
Yeah, I think that the reason I bring this up, number one, is because I'm a huge fan of Lauren, and I wonder if you have ever felt or struggled with comparisonitis, following people that you admire and at the same time have these conflicting feelings about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've told the story of like walking into a high level mastermind. When was this? 2017, with some of the top names in the online space who were making, you know, multiple millions at the time. And I had just parted ways with a partnership and sort of was like starting over in a lot of ways. And I walk into this room and I see this one particular table of like the people who I've most admired. And I'm standing there going, please, dear God, let there be another open seat. Let there be another open seat. Don't make me sit there. And there was not. And it was a beautiful experience of really, you know, challenging some of those upper limits and fears and, you know, questions in my mind of like, how can I possibly add value to these people who have been in this for so much longer than me? And it was funny. Zach Spuckler was in that group, and me and him were like the youngest people there, we're the only one like in our 20s. And I'm like, yeah, Zach, we're like, it's okay. Like, you know, like I think we got time. Like, we're here. We're like the youngins. That was years ago, you know, but it's really cool to see how all of those things will evolve, and just getting to be in that mastermind. I think that quieted a lot of the comparison, because you get to hear from these people who are the, you know, best of the best in the industry, crushing it, having these massive teams, massive successes. And it's like, oh, they feel uncomfortable getting on video because of their weight. Oh, they didn't know how to fire somebody and, you know, kept them on payroll and just had just like awkward dance with them, and they fired them. And then they came into work the next day because they didn't fire them clearly enough. You know, it's like all these like little weird things that, you know, we're all going through them. So I think that was a really beautiful like recognition and reminder, and getting to just see everyone's humanness.
Yeah. And by the way, just as a reference, Zach Spuckler was on this podcast, and everybody could go check it out on episode 33. I absolutely love the man. Let me ask you something. From your podcast episodes, from the research that I've done, from my extensive homework on Jen Casey, one of the things that stands out is that, especially at first, there was a lot of really like type A strategy focused energy in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And now that, you know, you just said it at the top of the show, which is you are really pivoting to a more of a spiritual look at business, a spiritual path for online coaches out there. And for many people, for many of our listeners, those two things appear to be in opposition. They don't have to be, but they seem to be. It's like the opposite of type A strategy, masculine energy, is spirituality and the feminine energy, and, you know, and all of those things. I would love for you to teach us a quick lesson on that, on why do we see them as opposites, and what is it really?
Ooh, why do we see it as opposites? I think a lot of people distort the feminine and masculine energy into like female and male. And I mean, there's like a whole other podcast that could be created around just like the gender binary. I highly recommend that you go follow Alok on Instagram, one of my favorite people to follow. Absolutely brilliant, and really unpacks all of the things around the gender binary and all of the misconceptions related to that. And I've learned so much from them about that, and really just understanding why we put things in this binary thinking. But yeah, for me, it's been really interesting over the last couple of years getting to work with so many entrepreneurs. And I was doing a Q&A maybe 6 months ago with I have like a baby offer for content repurposing thing. And I was like, let me just do like a Q&A in here. I want to connect with these people. And It was wild to me that when everybody first introduced themselves and just said like, oh, this is what I do, everyone leaned into this more like tangible masculine side of what they do. And as we all started talking and unpacking their questions, it's like, oh yeah, like I'm an event planner, but I'm also a psychic and I see beings. And I'm like, what, where the frick was that at the top of this? Like, what's going on, guys? And it was like one after another, after another, after another. So it's really interesting and such a mirror for me as well of like, wow, okay, this is something that I need to just like really lean into even more and speak about. Because really for my clients, like the biggest thing that they will tell me is that they really wanted to find a mentor who was embodying both the feminine and the masculine, who could be on a call and pivot and have a conversation about, let's dive into the nuances of your webinar slides and what's not working and how do we really like unpack the psychology of these slides and what is not in the right order, what's in the not the right structure, but then also being able to like help them clear an entity that's, you know, hanging out in their shoulder and like do energy work with them. So it's like being able to say that those are not different things. And I understand that a lot of people in the marketing space, it's like, oh, if you're spiritual, you have to be talking about your yoni and wear flowy dresses and, you know, whatever that is. And it's like, they don't need any of that. Like, these are all just like made up, branded archetypes that people have fallen into and pigeonholed themselves into, but your self-expression can be whatever the hell you want it to be. And if you embody both of those things, then yeah, why not talk about, like, as I have a program called Pitch to Your Niche. So it's like, I understand the value of niching, especially when you're first getting started. That was how things really blew up for me, is, you know, really specifically working with health coaches. But, you know, I think as the online space has evolved over the last couple of years, I think people are just really, especially after the last 2 years, like really just craving connection and authenticity and really looking for somebody to model what they want to embody or what they already feel they have embodied. They just don't know how to express it in a way that's marketable. They're like, oh, I can't be all of the things that I am, and I have to just limit it to one thing. And while I understand, you know, there's a lot of growth opportunity within having niched accounts, I also think that for some personality types and human design types, that's actually not the most authentic way of putting yourself out there and could actually be hindering your growth.
What would you say to someone that is still in that space, that is still feeling like, no, but Jen, you don't understand. There are things that I have to do, right? Even though I don't want them to. That's what life is. What would you tell them?
That you get to choose your own narrative. You get to be the author of your life. And so if that's the story that you want to write, then great. That's the story that you're choosing. And I also realize there are some situations where there are certain like baseline need things like, well, somebody needs to do the dishes. Like, what do you mean, Jen? Just because like I get to be the author of my own life, I author out that dishes don't need to be, like, I understand that. That's not really, I think we're talking bigger conceptual, visionary level type things. But also it's like, if you don't like doing dishes, like, okay, maybe today is not the day where you hire support, but maybe that's something that you can allow yourself and give yourself permission to start envisioning for the next year, the next 5 years, next 10 years, next 20 years, who knows? Like maybe in 20 years, you're not doing any dishes and you have someone there and you never have to do dishes again. Like if that's a thing you really doesn't bring you joy. So it's just about giving yourself that permission to be the author instead of stressing about changes that have to happen tomorrow.
Yeah. It's, how much do you think has to do with wanting to have more control over your life? For some reason, I think of the word control as a negative, when really like the way that I look at intuition is, no, I want to be able to have agency in my own life. But the word control somehow feels off. Why is that? Something you feel? Am I crazy?
Yeah, I guess it's the context in which we're looking at this from a spiritual perspective. I think where my brain is going with this right now as you're asking this question and I'm processing it is just that, at least for me, when I've tried to control things, I've limited the lens of possibility. Mm-hmm. So to give some context and an example, when I was in the network marketing space, I created this rule, and I was kind of subconscious at the time. I didn't quite recognize or label it as a rule, but I created this rule that I wasn't allowed to pivot or transition until I hit a certain monetary goal. Even though for the last 3 months, my finances in that business were starting to dip because I already knew that I already had gotten the message that it was time to leave, that it was no longer aligned. But I kept myself caged in this rule, this story that I had created, that it wasn't valid for me to leave until I had achieved X, Y, or Z. And so I was trying to control the universe. I was trying to control how my money would come in. And when I finally decided to transition, it was actually a friend of mine. I was in a law of attraction meetup group. I was the youngest one in it by like 20 years. And the leader of the group, Helen, said to me, I want you to be my social media coach. And I was like, Helen, I only really work with people in my network marketing company or extended team. Like, I don't do coaching outside of it. She was like, I don't care. Tell me how much I can pay you. And like, I want to meet with you and I want you to teach me, because she was a life coach and wanted to like build online. And I was like, all right, let me go think about it. And I eventually came back to her and I was like, okay, I'm going to be charging $100 an hour. I was going to charge her $30 an hour. And we did $100 an hour, ended up being, we would meet at Starbucks once a week. And it was like my first moment where I actually said yes to other opportunities, but where previously I had maybe said, oh, like, that's not what I do. Or I was just creating all these rules around how money could come in because I wanted to be in control of things and wanted to do it in the timing that I thought was best. But actually there was a very different timeline that I had energetically aligned with and I didn't even realize it. So it's like this or something better.
Right. And this or something better. And it's either a hell yes or a no, right? Is following your gut and doing what you feel in alignment to do. Let me ask, as we're starting to wind down, there is one big question that I have for you. You hit 7 figures in your business. What is the biggest difference between being a 6-figure entrepreneur and 7 figures?
So this is a very interesting question. So I would say there's so many things going through my head right now. The biggest difference between, one thing I'll say is 7 people who are achieving more, if they're achieving it in a way that is aligned, it's not that they're not dealing with the same problems as you, they're just resolving them more quickly. So one of like my only catchphrase is all success is state dependent. And so one thing that I've noticed about friends of mine who have multiple 7-figure businesses is that they've done the inner discovery. I don't like calling it inner work. They've done the inner healing, inner discovery, and they understand how to regulate their nervous system more effectively. And that allows them to stay clear-headed when solving problems. And so instead of, let's say, somebody who's a newer entrepreneur, I don't even, because anybody can, like, I had multiple 6 figures out the gate, and it was, I wasn't quite sure how to handle all that money. So I don't even know if money is like the best measure just based on my own experiences. But the people who are consistently achieving more from an aligned place, they are able to pivot, make decisions more quickly, follow their own decision-making style. And like, if you follow human design, it's like some people decide in the moment. That's what I get my decisions immediately. For somebody who's a reflector, they will have to wait like a full moon cycle or something. Other people, they have to feel into their gut. One of my clients, she is an emotional, she has to respond emotionally. So it's like she goes through this like emotional roller coaster. And then once the emotion passes, then she can make the decision. So I think just really like understanding yourself, how you best make decisions, how to be supported. It's like the people who are consistently making more from an aligned place have struggled through and figured out how to navigate all of those nuances, and they're able to achieve more without burning out.
I love that. I love that answer so much. I've never actually heard anybody say that like clearly.
Well, I've never heard anyone ask that before. So I'm like, okay, hold on. I need to like think about this for a second. I need a beat. Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that with us. So let me ask you, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have of you as a successful businesswoman?
Well, I don't know. Maybe that everything comes easily. I've had people say to me, even about like my live videos, oh, you're so precise in the way that you deliver it. I'm like, well, when I have webinars, I was just talking to a client the other day, we were talking about webinars. She's like, yeah, but the way you deliver it is so concise. I'm like, girl, I got a script. She's like, you script it? I'm like, yeah, I'm just really good at like teleprompter level reading. She's like, well, what makes you script it? I said, look, I used to just ad lib it, but for a webinar, you want it to be 60 minutes if you can. So I know myself, and I'm like, I have dialed it into just making sure that I'm maximizing those 60 minutes to the most. And yeah, that takes a lot of time behind the scenes. And I think it's easy to look at somebody and think, oh, that just must come naturally to them, but you're not seeing the hours behind the scenes and the grit that goes into it and the tears that go into it and like the meltdowns and like the crises. One thing I will say too, like I've talked to so many successful entrepreneurs that you wouldn't expect, myself included, being like, I just want to burn my business to the ground. Like, I'm just so over this. Like, I don't do any of this shit anymore. Like, I don't even know how many times I could count I've had those experiences. And I think people are surprised, like newer entrepreneurs are surprised to hear that because they've had those experiences and they're like, wait, that doesn't go away. And it's like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it does. It hasn't for me or any of my friends. So.
All right. So if everybody who's listening had to do what you're about to tell them to do, and they have to do it, they have no choice in the next 24 hours, what would that thing be?
What's coming through is take off the mask and stand in your authentic truth. If every single person in the entire world did that in the next 24 hours, it's just mind-blowing to think what would be possible. Like conflict gone, everyone just be in their truth.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for being so generous and answering all the questions. Wherever I wanted to take you, you went with me. So really, I can thank you enough for your generosity today. So can you please tell everyone where to go and follow you, where they can get more of Jen Casey?
Yeah, so you can find me everywhere at Hey Jen Casey, also heyjencasey.com, and also on my podcast, CEO Psyche.
Thank you so much. And we're going to put all of those links down in the show notes so you can all. And by the way, if you're in a podcasting app, just switch over from this one. This episode is over. Go switch over from this one. Go to CEO Psyche and go and subscribe to Jen's podcast. Thank you so much, Jen. This has been wonderful.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me here. And thank you everyone for listening. This is so great.